Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, Emerald Planet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for the 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are taking us through the 21st century. And as we add 2 billion new people to the planet by 2050, how are we going to provide the food, the fuel, the fiber, and the basic infrastructure to take care of all these humans? And we're going to be talking about in this particular segment of just how we're going to be able to provide the food and to provide green jobs and all the aspects of increasing livable communities around the globe. Sitting right beside me is Vanessa Ferragut, who is a CPM, and she's going to tell us what that's all about. She is the founder of what's called Greenease and the Ferragut Event Group. And Vanessa, welcome to the Emerald Planet.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Sam.
Well, I'm glad to have you here. Tell us again, what is CPM, and then we're going to talk about Greenease.
Sure. CMP is actually a designation in the event and meeting industry. It stands for Certified Meeting Professional.
Well, I think that's very important because everything is becoming more professional these days. And as we add all these new souls to the planet, it's going to be increased emphasis as far as professionalization. But Greenease, that's a very interesting name. Tell us about it.
So Greenease, Greenease, E-A-S-E, the tagline is green, just got easy. We are a website and soon developing a mobile app that connects consumers with restaurants that buy from local farms and purveyors or provide a healthy alternative food option.
Well, looking at that, I know this is something that's really very important. There's a great emphasis on, growing and buying locally. And so what is it that is going on as far as why this movement towards local sourcing and also local produce of goods?
Sure. So we've all heard of it before, perhaps the slow food movement. It actually was brought about in the 1980s in Italy. It was a sort of a campaign against the fast food industry. It was a way to bring the food back to local, regional food, really encouraging awareness building of biodiversity and animal welfare. And this is just something that's a trend. It's continuing, it's growing. People today want to know where their food comes from.
Yeah, well, looking at this whole thing as far as slow food, we had actually the representatives of the organization out of Italy that we interviewed some time ago define slow food. Why not, we got the fast food, slow food.
Okay, so slow food really is an emphasis on not the industrial way of farming that you and I know today, right? So something you walk up to a counter, you get your food, you take it home. A lot of it's industrially produced, mass marketed. Slow foods takes it down back to the people, the farm, the land, really dedicating resources behind an industry that cares about the soil, the environment, and the people working to bring you that food.
Well, I'm going to go back over this photograph. We could say this is slow food, where we're slowly walking through with the farmer going to buy his hot houses.
Yeah.
But looking at this, how do you bring about making sure that the food that's grown locally is as nutritious or more nutritious than what we're getting, say it's shipped in from Chile or Bolivia or California?
Sure. So when you think about something that's being shipped from, say, China or India, Peru, Canada, where we get most of our food from, a lot of times that food has to travel a long distance. So what happens is they cut that product down. They cut down that tomato or that apple or that spear of broccoli long before it has a chance to ripen. And without it getting to that ripening point, we do lose a lot of the nutritional value. So by shortening the distance that the time that it takes for the food to get to you, you're actually guaranteed to have a more nutritious and fresher produce. So really bringing it back to here. And one of the emphasis with Washington, D.C., we're so fortunate in this area. We have amazing farms and farmers, like you saw in the picture, that's David Lay from Linda's Mercantile in Virginia. A lot of amazing farms in Maryland, D.C., Virginia, West Virginia, as far as Pennsylvania. There should be no reason that we're not all eating local here. We have so much access to it.
Well, having access, I think that's something that's very important, because what we want to do is we really want to allow people to actually to enhance the soil and also clean the air and the water, and at the same time provide the food. So what kinds of things are you learning when you go out to these sites? Because I know you're going out and visiting with the farmers and looking at who is really doing it the very best way, and many times it's going to be all organic. So what kind of things are they thinking about? What are they planning for in order to deliver the very best fruit, herbs, vegetables to the tables within the local communities?
I think that a local farmer really cares about the land, because that land is what it's his livelihood for the next year, perhaps even his children and his grandchildren's livelihood if he so chooses to leave the farm down. So really that there is such an emphasis on taking care of the land. We've heard the terms biodynamic. That's really when you're growing something that's giving nutritional value back into the land to again grow and products from that land again. And Another big reason is animal welfare. In industrial farms, you have the CAFOs, the concentrated animal feedlot operations, a lot of waste runoff, a lot of pollution. But in smaller farms and privately owned small managed farms, you don't have as many issues with animal welfare. The animals aren't raised their entire lives in gestation crates and are have a bit of a life before they are brought to slaughter.
Looking at this, like the cattle we're talking about, it could be lamb, it could be cattle, it could be pigs, chickens, whatever it is. What is range fed? This is a term that people kind of throw around. Even when you go to the farmer's market now, there'll be a big sign, range fed chickens, range fed cattle. What is range fed? So
there's a term of grass fed and range free range. And so what we found that two very different things. Many times people boast about being grass fed or free range, and what that actually sometimes means for a lot of industrial farms is that animal only ate grass or was grass fed the last three months of its mature life before it was slaughtered. Free range means a little bit more. It actually means that animal is able to have access to pasture and to eat from that land. What's great about free range too is, if you know industrial, one of the biggest environmental issues with industrial farms is the waste runoff. It's all this waste produced from the animal feces that really just goes right into our waterways. With free range, an animal is able to graze from the land, and his waste actually produces a natural fertilizer right there for the land. And so you're really providing for that land that the animal is feeding off of rather than polluting.
Well, and also too, it's all natural as far as what's going back into the soil. So you're taking away from the soil, you're putting back into the soil, you're doing as naturally as possible. We're trying to enhance the environment, and that's part of all this sustainable nutrition and natural resources and livable communities, and make sure that everything is absolutely as natural as possible. Now, looking at this particular photograph, I know what you're doing is you're sourcing and working with the restaurants and even cafeterias, maybe even schools, so that they are getting locally produced foods as well. So what is that link, from farm to fork, I think is what they call that?
So we are actually more of we're a B2B product, so we can connect consumers with the restaurants. Now, this was an amazing event here. This was our Farmer Chef Summit that we did in partnership with Arcadia Farms. Pamela, you're going to be interviewing soon. Great concept they came up with, where they bring the farms and the chefs together. It's sort of, we kid around that it was maybe like a speed dating where farmers and chefs had to answer a five question survey, and with that we knew what the farmers were growing and what the chefs were looking for, and therefore Arcadia Farms was able to connect them. That's Pam right there, and talking to a chef, and a lot of great relationships came from this connection, and it was an amazing networking event. And just Pam could probably tell you more, but it's a way to start dialogue within the restaurants.
Well, we have to introduce her because people are not going to know who this is. Yeah. So this is Pamela Hess, who is the Executive Director of Arcadia Center for Sustainable Food and Agriculture, and they have an absolutely outstanding program And so we want to be sure that we always define who we're talking about when we're bringing up names and all that. So looking at why should we care that much about buying local? I mean, we can go to the grocery store, we buy, most people are really not looking at it as far as, the sourcing or what have you. So what is it that we really want to think about when we're going out and shopping, not only just the nutritional, but also the location of it?
Okay, so when I think about why we buy local, I have got my top 4 reasons here. The first one would be environmental. We touched on a couple of them already about the waste runoff and really the impacts, the negative environmental impacts from industrial farming. The next really is economical. Industrial farms are probably 12% of the farms in this country, and yet provide 88% of the food we eat.
That's just amazing.
It's staggering. It doesn't make any sense, right? And so when we support local businesses, so think if you go to a big box retailer, you spend $1, and about 10 cents out of that dollar goes back into the local economy. If you go to a local business, say a local restaurant that's buying from
or
a local
even a local farm.
Or a local owned business, about 45 cents out of your dollar goes back into the local economies. And I know for one, I love DC. I love the city. I was born here. I want to support it in every way I know. And as consumers, we vote with our dollars. So number 2 would be economical. The third one I'd also say is social for our farmers. As an entrepreneur, I really think, farmers are the original entrepreneurs.
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt about that.
Supporting them and really being able to give them an opportunity to sell their products, buy their products, and endorse their products. And last but not least would really have to be animal welfare. Anybody who has a pet would know the way many industrial farms treat animals in this country is sad. To spend an entire life in a gestation crate, never once see the sun. So those are my 4 reasons.
Got about 1 minute left, so we're going to have 2 questions.
Go ahead.
Okay, one is why are people moving towards slow food?
Health issues such as heart disease, obesity, are really affecting Americans today, and people are starting to link that with food. We know that it comes from food, so why not change how we eat and what we eat? So I really think that there is a trend in that direction. The National Restaurant Association also rated for 2014 local foods, environmental sustainability, local sustainable seafood, really at the top trends for 2014. So we're seeing a demand for it.
Okay, so we're moving from fast food to slow food, and we're going to slow down and all that, which is really a good thing. And then what makes Greenease unique?
Greenease, you can search on our platform. You can search by grass-fed or free-range meats. If you have a hormone intolerance, hormone-free meats, local, organic. You can search by the neighborhoods. We're as far north as Frederick and as far south as Virginia Beach. And in addition to that, about a quarter of our farms, 25% of our restaurants have provided their farm name. So you can find your restaurant and you can see right then and there where their food comes from.
I think that's really fantastic. And actually, when I'm going out shopping for restaurants now, I'm looking for the ones that have local produce in that. And the more they get, the more we're going to be looking and supporting it. But, thank you, Vanessa Ferragut, who is a CMP, founder of Greenease and Ferragut Event Group. And thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
This is firstgov.gov, where we're obsessed with getting you government information.
Brand new student loan applications on the site, baby. This calls for a celebration. Where's your uncle?
So in the end, it was either take the astronaut gig or come work here. What can I say? Duty called.
Dude, that's my cop.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure that's Sam's cop.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No. Sam's? No.
Just log on or email us and get what you need.
C, change of address form. That's how it's done.
D, driver's license renewal.
E, emailing social security information.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Nice, we'll allow it. All right, Ed.
What are those? Government surplus cars for auction.
You posted those online last time.
No, you did.
I'm posting them online this time.
For all your government information, firstgov.gov.
Oh, what have we got here? Sometimes you feel tired. You can't seem to lose those extra pounds off your midsection. And your joints hurt when you take the stairs. Well, you're getting older. But I'm happy to say that there's some simple things we can do to keep you happy and healthy for years to come. We can also lower your risk for some serious diseases the older population is often subject to. Proper nutrition is more important than ever. Your body has changed, you know. Not as many treats. A basic exercise plan, lots of walks and fresh air, and most importantly, come and see me for twice yearly checkups to help ensure the best possible quality of life. Now, how does that sound? Good boy.
Improve the quality of life for your elderly pet. Schedule twice yearly checkups that include preventive care and regular lab work. A message from the veterinary members of the American Animal Hospital Association.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products in over 144 different nations. We're looking for the best of the best, the things that can be the examples, also that are very practical and actually aid and abet the increased quality of living for people regardless of the society or the nation state within which they live. And we're going to a planet with 9 billion souls, yes, 9 billion souls. And of course we need to have the food, we need to have the water at the same time, plus education, health care, and everything else. I have someone sitting with me who is really working very diligently as far as the food side of all this, and also to increase the livable communities and the environmental quality within the area. This is Pamela. She goes by Pam Hess, is the Executive Director of Arcadia Center for Sustainable Food and Agriculture. And Pam, welcome to the Emerald Planet.
Thank you.
Glad to have you with us. And I must say, you guys are just doing absolutely fantastic work.
Yeah, my team is, I can take credit for them, but they do all the hard work.
Oh, well, that's exactly what you want to do, right? Is to make sure they're getting the hard work done. And it's amazing the number of volunteers that you have, the outreach into the community, and so many different collaborators. I think it's just fantastic. So we're really pleased to have you. But we have your logo here. What is Arcadia?
Arcadia Center for Sustainable Food and Agriculture is a nonprofit. We got our nonprofit status this time last year, and what we're about is fixing the broken local food system. Our founder, Michael Babin, is a restaurateur with, I think, 17 restaurants now in the DC and Northern Virginia area.
It's a lot of restaurants.
And all of his chefs are very focused on serving the best food that they can, which necessarily means sourcing it from great local farms.
Well, looking at this photograph, there's so much that's really going on, and so we're going to have some of the slides here. It's going to be talking about some of this, but it's really amazing. You're so close into the capital city of the United States, and yet you're actually farming.
We are.
So tell us about this mix and how you're able to do that.
Well, we have a small farm on the grounds of Woodlawn Plantation, which used to be part of Mount Vernon. George Washington gave it to his granddaughter when she got married. It's got an incredible history of the intersection of sustainable agriculture and social justice, which is something that we think that we're continuing. We hope to be doing that. We farm on about 1 acre there, and we've just broken ground on a new farm that another landowner out in Middleburg invited us to come and farm. So we'll have 52 acres there with about 5 acres of vegetables and then some livestock as well. The important part is that all this food that we're growing using sustainable methods, we harvest, aggregate with food from 10 or 12 other local farms, all within about 100 miles of DC. And we put it up on our mobile market. This is a shot here of our annual farm dinner. It's actually biannual. We do one in the spring and one in the fall. And it's a fundraiser for our farm, and it's a really lovely day. But we take all of this food and we put it on a school bus that we retrofitted into a rolling farm stand. And we take that rolling farm stand, which is called the mobile market, and we go into what you've heard of as food deserts. These are low-income areas that don't have a grocery store or a farmer's market of their own, where a lot of people are using food stamps. And we sell the food at really affordable prices, and we actually honor and double the value of food stamps, so people can get twice as much food from us as they would otherwise.
I think it's fantastic. And when you're talking about food desert, what is a food? We hear this all the time, but really, what is it?
A food desert has an official definition, and that is where there is no grocery store where you could support a healthy diet within a mile. What's also important is that that has to be a low-income neighborhood. You can have McMansions out in the country that can drive 15 or 30 miles to a grocery store. That is not a food desert. It's a low-income area that doesn't have ready access to healthy food. Regardless of income, people will not walk more than a half a mile to get healthy food. So the healthy choice needs to be the convenient choice. And that's what our mobile market does. It brings healthy, great, high quality, first quality farm food that was picked that day or the day before directly to folks who really don't have access to it otherwise. And what we're finding is it makes an incredible difference in people's lives. 50% of our customers who come to us with their SNAP cards, that's the new word for food stamps, and use it the first time, half of them come back and become regular customers. You show me
50%.
50%. You
That
show
is
me
incredible.
any business that can turn a first-time customer half the time into a regular, and I will show you a runaway success.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic. And looking at this snowy picture here, we know that farming really is a 24/7, 365 kind of operation. And people think, well, you just kind of shut down in the wintertime and you go about your business. But actually, you're going really 12 months out of the year.
Right.
So what kinds of things actually do happen in the wintertime as getting ready for the spring, summer, and autumn?
Right. Well, winter is our big planning time, but it's also an important time in the life of a farm. On a sustainable farm, what you're doing during the winter is sowing in cover crops that restore the soil, that will be turned under and generate lots of nutrients for what will be planted
Building
next.
the humus in the soil.
Exactly. And it's also, we're killing bugs. Everybody's been very upset with the amount of snow that we've had, but we're very excited because it really takes care of a lot of pests, or at least it reduces them. And then we spend our winter time working on our summer, spring, and fall programs. We have courses during the winter with great chefs who donate their time and talents to us to teach people how to cook their specialties. These are called master courses. We have field trips that start in the spring. In the summer, we have a summer farm camp, which is a really incredible day camp. It runs for 4 weeks, and we have designated 25% of our slots. 30 kids will go to farm camp for free. They come from low-income families right near Woodlawn Plantation. So we are constantly raising money for that. If anybody wants to support our kids coming to camp, we'll take their money happily. We are right now working on raising money for a second mobile market so that we can double the number of stops. We will be at 10 low-income neighborhoods this year. We'd like to get to 20, but for that we need another mobile market and to hire a few more drivers to run these buses.
I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I've gone through these slides, but I'm going to go back through this. We're going to go back from here in the wintertime. And now here we are in the summer during the growing season, and here's someone that's actually sampling the fruits of the land, if you will. So going from, all of this, what is the planning process you go through? How many people are involved in this? And then how do you get the volunteers to come out and be involved, literally around the year?
We have a remarkably small staff for the amount of work that gets done. There are, I think, 6 of us full-time, and then we have a couple of seasonal people that come in. During the summer, we have our farm camp counselors. So during the winter, everybody more or less has their own program line that they're building, and then right when April starts, which is just about now, it takes off. As far as our volunteer outreach is concerned, it's funny how many people find us by Googling farm volunteer work. The last Saturday of every month, we open up the farm to 25 volunteers who sign up, and they come out and they work for 3 or 4 hours. And then a lot of them forge relationships with our farmer and arrange to come out individually to help work on the farm. And
that's fantastic.
Yeah, we have growing lists
involved.
and lots of festivals that we go to. And this is something that I think a lot of people are really connecting with, especially now. It's a way to get directly involved in something that really benefits everyone. There are 2 food systems now in this country. There's one for wealthy people, and they can get all kinds of great food, and there's one for poor people, and it's mostly processed, unhealthy food that contributes to diabetes and obesity and heart disease and hypertension. We want to make one food system for everyone.
Yeah, and I think what we're looking at right here is where people actually get involved, where they're actually touching the soil, being involved. I was raised on a large ranch, and we also had dairy. And one of my father's friends who was in the war with him called up and says, my daughter thinks that milk actually grows in bottles. I need to come over to your farm quick.
Yeah.
And so he had 3 daughters, and he brought them out, brought his whole family, had a big picnic, and they went through the whole process. But what you're seeing here is that people are actually getting their hands in the dirt, but also they're learning much more in that. What kind of things are they actually learning when they come out and volunteer? It's not just they're giving their time, but they're actually taking much back with them.
We do a lot of lessons on exactly what sustainable agriculture is, and it's pretty eye-opening for people. It's basically using our human intelligence to harness the forces of nature to work with us. The last 50 years we've been using our human intelligence to sort of beat back nature, and we've had all kinds of really negative environmental consequences as a result. So we're sort of reaching back and looking at what does nature want to do and how do we work with her, and that means cover crops and rotating crops. It also means having a really lively border so that we're attracting beneficial insects who eat the bad insects that want to attack our vegetables. It's conserving water and planting things in the right places so that they grow properly, so that we have to do less work on the land. We're doing some really cool stuff this year. We're doing an experiment with perennial wheat. Wheat in this country is an annual crop, and so we're going to be planting a perennial variety that you sow once and then for 7 years it will produce. So we're pretty excited about that, and we'll take it to Washington's grist mill, we hope, to grind it. And we'll get maybe one loaf of bread out of it.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic, though, and just think of, you know, this full cycle going back hundreds of years. But what are these young eyes seeing right here? What are they absorbing, and what are they beholding that they would just not get in their day-to-day life?
So these are kids who come to farm camp, and they arrive bright and early. They tend to our chickens, and they collect the eggs from the chickens, and they move them onto fresh grass. We have the chickens in a mobile chicken truck, and we teach them about that cycle of fertility. The chickens eat the bugs, and they fertilize the grass, and then they move on every day. The kids here have, you can see they're looking at one of the eggs. They're getting a cooking lesson. They walk through the farm, they pick stuff with counselors, and then they take it back to a big work table that my dad actually built, and they prepare the food, and it's a great way to get kids trying something new. It's a fun adventure. It's not a power struggle when they're on the farm and they're pulling turnips and eating them raw, which they do all the time.
That's incredible. Now this looks like we're having a real soiree. Yeah, so
it is. This is an event called The Vices That Made Virginia Great. It celebrates at Woodlawn Plantation. We didn't do it last year, but we're working on plans for a new one. It celebrates bourbon, oysters, pork, tobacco. It's a vice party. It's really fun. It's a great night out.
It's just a fun way to get people out.
Exactly, and get their money.
Really look at what's going on around them.
It's a fundraiser mostly, and it's trying to bring some life back into Woodlawn Plantation. And this is a little artful view of our mobile market. It's a school bus that we ripped all the seats out, rejiggered the inside, and painted a bright green, and we roll from neighborhood to neighborhood.
I've been in this a number of times. We work very closely with UDC, University of District of Columbia, and it stops there, and they bring it in on a weekly basis. But I tell you, this is just absolutely beautiful food that's being produced right here in the local community, and we are just about running out of time, and I wanted to leave with that. So where are you going in about 10 seconds? Where are you going to be in the future?
I'm hoping to have a fleet of 5 buses that will turn into $250,000 worth of fresh, healthy food being sold into DC and Northern Virginia's food deserts. We can really make a dent in public health that way.
And it's going to be right through these green buses, and you're looking for at least 2 or 3 more?
Looking for 4 more. We're working on our second one right now.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we're going to push it to the other edge.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. This is Pam Hess, Executive Director, Arcadia Center, and thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
Too many women get hit by their boyfriends and husbands. Too many women are pressured into having unprotected sex. Half of the people in the world living with AIDS are women. It doesn't have to be this way. Together, we can change this reality. Let's strive for a world free of violence.
At Volunteers of America, we don't just give kids a way to stay off the streets. We give them the tools they need to reach their full potential. We don't just help the elderly receive needed care. We help them live life to the fullest. We don't just provide food for homeless individuals and families. We provide job training and placement so they can buy groceries. Volunteers of America is a national organization that for over 100 years has provided programs and services that allow people to overcome their challenges to become vital members of their community. At Volunteers of America, we don't just help people, we help people help themselves. Find out how you can support the programs that are working in your community. Contact Volunteers of America today. Call 1-800-899-0089.
Drivers face all kinds of distractions.
Guys, stop playing. No. 127 consecutive.
Before your wireless phone becomes one of them, stop. Drive safely. Keep your phone in easy reach and dial sensibly. In bad weather or traffic, call later and use a hands-free device. Remember, with wireless, safety is your call.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And as we add 2 billion new people to the planet, we have to really be conscious about how we're going to plan for the water, the food, and all the basic infrastructure that's needed, such as healthcare, education, roadways, and everything else. But at the same time, we need to provide a clean environment so that we're balancing between the soil, the air, and the water. And how we're going to be able to do that and at the same time to be able to feed people. It's estimated that we're actually generating enough food on the planet right now for 14 billion people. Yes, 14 billion people. But in many countries, over half of the food that's produced actually goes to waste or is destroyed through bad management or through natural causes such as floods, droughts. And so how are we going to actually be able to harness all this power that we're actually generating at the same time to aid these people who are coming on? We have someone who's actually working in this whole area and really a unique niche as far as the pollinators, those insects that actually allow the plants to thrive. Kelly Lawhorn is the Volunteer Maryland Coordinator for Natural Partners and the Monarch Sister Schools program. We have this program on in the past, and for full disclosure, I'm on the board of Natural Partners and work with the Monarch Sister Schools program. And sitting right beside me is Selwyn Ramp, who is a Volunteer Maryland Coordinator with what's called Chesapeake Natives. And in case we lose Kelly by Skype, and she's coming in by Skype or telephone, then we'll go right to Selwyn and we'll continue right on because these programs actually coordinate and relate to each other. Kelly, I think you're here.
Yep, I'm here.
Well, welcome and glad that you're joining us on the Emerald Planet. And it sounds like you've been very busy getting ready for everything that's coming up of the Monarchs returning to the area.
We've been very busy, with spring coming along.
Well, I think that's really wonderful. Tell us two things. One is about the Natural Partners, but also what is this Volunteer Maryland Coordinator?
Sure. So Natural Partners is the environmental nonprofit organization that runs Monarch Sister Schools program, which is the program that I mainly focus on. And Volunteer Maryland is an organization, it's an AmeriCorps program that runs out of the governor's office. They match up Volunteer Maryland coordinators with nonprofits, government organizations, and schools to help them create, manage, and maintain their volunteer programs.
So looking at this for our domestic and international audiences, Kelly, tell us how you would get involved as far as the Volunteer Maryland Coordinator Program, and then how did you end up at Natural Partners?
Well, to get involved with the Volunteer Maryland program, you would probably apply through AmeriCorps, and then you would go through the interview process and get placed with an organization of your interest. And I got involved with Natural Partners. Actually, I applied for a job through Chesapeake Bay Trust, and that didn't follow through. And then my supervisor, William Dent, who is the executive director of Natural Partners, actually came across my resume and asked me for an interview, and I got involved with Monarch Sister Schools program that way.
Well, I'll tell you, William Dent is a fantastic young man. He's been involved overseas many years, and also is really the driving force behind Natural Partners and also the Monarch Sister School program. And we should say this is really a NAFTA Northern American project, which includes Canada and Mexico as well as the United States. But looking at the Monarch Sister Schools program, people think of monarchs, if we can go back to these photographs here, being very beautiful, and they're nice to have around in the gardens and all that, but they actually serve a very useful purpose. What are some of these purposes?
Well, monarchs and other pollinators are very essential to our lives. Monarchs and pollinators are responsible for producing 33% of our produce and food. So without them, we would lose 33% of our food, including melons, chocolate, coffee, and lots of things. And they also have a really great migration pattern, which is, I think, why we think they are so important. They migrate from Canada all the way to Mexico, and then the fourth generation stays in Mexico for 4.5 months. And they're starting their journey north right now, back to Canada.
Well, my understanding is that the monarchs may be down to only 10% of what they were maybe 30 to 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. What is the actual count of the monarchs, and what seems to be happening to them?
I'm not sure the actual count. I think it's around 3 million or so. It's very low. It's the lowest in recorded history. But what's happening is across North America, it's becoming a food desert. For the monarchs. Their habitat is completely disappearing due to the use of pesticides and herbicides such as Roundup on our farmlands. And also their habitat in Mexico is depleting because of illegal logging. So it's definitely a huge problem.
Well, looking at the, I was actually down there just last year at the native habitat for the monarchs. Mm-hmm. There are specific species of trees that they enjoy, and understand there's over 300 hectares a year of these logs they're being taken out of these forests, and so it's an ever decreasing amount of trees that actually are welcoming to the monarchs. And they, just like with the milkweed and other things they need, this is something that we need to be very cognizant of. But why should people be involved in the local community as far as generating both the vegetable gardens as well as the ornamental gardens, and then even across the communities of faith, the schools, and public lands to allow for the monarchs to come in and have a place to land, replenish, go on, but at the same time to be able to feed?
I think it's really important for people to get involved. Our pollinators, like I said, are extremely essential to producing our food. So having a pollinator garden in your front yard or at your school is really helpful. Also, I think it's important to have the pollinator gardens at schools. We put them in. We've been working with over 30 schools in the past few years. And it's a great place to have an outdoor classroom for the children. They really get to learn hands-on life cycle, migration, anything about the monarchs.
Yeah, it's really phenomenal when you see these age of the children that are involved, and they're doing this on a seasonal basis, but also day to day through the school program. It's just really wonderful. They have a chance to come out and have a direct link with the land, the air, the water, and at the same time with all these creatures such as the monarchs. But as you know, Kelly, Selwyn's sitting right beside me. He's a volunteer Maryland coordinator as you for Chesapeake Natives. And so since we seem to be having Skype in good manner right now, we'll let him ask the next question. Selwyn?
So, Kelly, as volunteer coordinator, how can school teachers and volunteers in your community or in their communities, parents, make a direct difference to get involved in organizations such as Natural Partners and more specifically Monarch Sister Schools program?
Mm-hmm. So we're always looking for volunteers. Each school is currently looking for a volunteer team leader, which is a person that's going to serve as a liaison, essentially, through Monarch Sister Schools program and whatever school they're assigned to. We're also looking for volunteers to speak and lead lessons at our after-school garden club. Volunteers are also essential to planning and maintaining the gardens. Also, you can make a difference by coming out to Chesapeake Natives and learning about the plant production of plants that Chesapeake Natives produces, we use in our school habitat garden. So it's a great hands-on learning experience. Another way you can make a difference is by planting native in your front yard. Monarch Sister Schools is actually starting a new initiative called Plant Butterflies. We're partnering with local garden shops to sell the plants that Chesapeake Natives produces, and the profits that we make from the plants will go towards the schools that we're working with. We're partnering with local nurseries, Binky's, American Plant, Johnson's, but you can find out more about that on plantbutterflies.org.
Well, I think it's absolutely fantastic. And looking at volunteers, I know you're looking for volunteers, and they're really critical to your program with the Natural Partners and the Monarch Sister School program. But what is the long-term benefits to the volunteers themselves? You know, we kind of understand how they can contribute to your organization, but what are they getting back as far as learning about more than the monarchs, but all different types of pollinators?
Sure. I think that they're getting a lot of hands-on experience. I mean, we have volunteers that are master gardeners, and then we also have people that haven't gardened before. So they're learning a lot about native plants, about pollinators, about gardening. The volunteers are essential because we're planting one garden at a time, you know. Once the garden is installed at a school, it'll stay there forever. So it's really helpful to have volunteers.
Well, I think it's absolutely fantastic about that. And also, if we can bring up this slide here, this gives an idea of some of the plantings that you've been done. What are we looking at specifically here? And for those in the audience, whether you're here or abroad, how can they get involved in something like what we're looking at right now?
Well, my contact information is on the website, and if people are interested in volunteering, just let me know your location, and I will try to pair you with a school near where you live. Yeah, we have 30 schools that we're working with right now. We actually just got contacted by a school in San Diego, so our program is definitely expanding across the country.
Well, looking at these children, what are they doing? We only have about a minute, so I want to go through some of these slides so that the youth that watch this will have an idea what they're preparing for, because they're going from this to this. So what's that transition, Kelly?
I actually can't see the photos, so maybe
Selwyn that's right. We have
the best person to answer that question.
Well, let me tell you, we have the children working on the compost, and then we have a absolutely gorgeous monarch butterfly sitting working on the milkweed.
So the children working in the compost are actually children at our school in Mexico. The children in Mexico are planting tree nurseries for the monarchs when they overwinter. So our volunteers probably wouldn't be involved in that, but the schools that we're working with here, they're planting native gardens anywhere from 6 by 6 foot to larger. So, yeah.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic, and we're going to lose you just in a few seconds because as we get ready to go out, but Kelly Lawhorn, who is the Volunteer Maryland Coordinator for Natural Partners and the Monarch Sister Schools program, thank you for coming in by Skype and being with us and sharing about the work that you're doing and how the volunteers can get involved, and also the positive impact on the youth as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
Around the world, 1 out of every 3 women will be beaten or otherwise abused in their lifetime, often by a family member or loved one. A future free from violence. It's all she's ever wished for.
Did you know you have the power to stop children from joining gangs? You can help a father find a job and home for his family. You can assist a woman who can't afford the medicine she needs to live and the home she can't live without. You can choose to make a difference in our community. Support Volunteers of America, and you can help improve the lives of nearly 2 million Americans each year with programs and services that help individuals and families overcome their challenges to become as independent as possible. Support the programs that are working in our community. Contact Volunteers of America today. Call 1-800-899-0089.
For some folks, saving for the future is easy, but for you, it might take a little more effort. Saving for your future is your responsibility, and there's a lot to save for.
I never thought of that.
Like your child's education, perhaps uncovered medical expenses, or just to be sure you can live the way you want when you retire. The time is now to save for tomorrow. Save now or work forever. The choice is yours. Choose to save.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States. I'm Dr. Sam Hancock, the President and Executive Director of Emerald Planet and Director of Hosts of the Emerald Planet TV. We come to you on a weekly basis to let you know about what is going on in the world as far as the best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And we're looking at those, the best of the best, as far as how we're able to take care of a planet that will have about 9 billion souls by 2050, and they're estimated could be 12 to 13 billion on the planet by the end of the century. So how are we going to do all these things? I have a gentleman sitting right beside me. His name is Selwyn, who is the Volunteer Maryland Coordinator for Chesapeake Natives. And welcome, Selwyn. Glad to have you.
Glad to be here.
And I know this is something that's very near and dear to you as you reach out through Chesapeake Natives and bring the environment closer into people, but also you're taking many people, hundreds and thousands of people out into nature. So what is Chesapeake Natives, and then what is a Volunteer Maryland Coordinator?
Chesapeake Natives is a small nonprofit that promotes, protects, and propagates native plants native to the Chesapeake Bay watershed, as you can see on the slide behind us. We run a small nursery in Upper Marlboro. And
now this is in the state of Maryland.
This is in the correct state of Maryland. Where we grow our native plants and sell them or provide them to homeowners, schools, and community organizations.
Now, looking at Chesapeake Bay, I know there's something that's called a watershed, and what we want to talk about first is what is a watershed, define our terms, and then how does that relate to the Chesapeake Bay, and how big is the Chesapeake Bay?
The last one I cannot entirely know. I don't exactly know the answer. But the Chesapeake Bay watershed basically means all the different rivers, streams, creeks that flow eventually into the Chesapeake Bay,
and which in turn goes out to the Atlantic Ocean.
Correct. So it's bracketed off basically by large mountains, hills, anything that prevents the water to go different directions. So all of these different, all the water goes to the bay and creates these connections from all the way up in the mountain areas down to the coastal plain. And that's not just the water that flows there, but also the organisms and everything that lives within it is related to each other in that way.
Yeah, I think this is something, so when we look at this, the expanse of this is in the mid-Atlantic states of United States, and so it is a very huge area. But if you look at the complexity of where we live with Washington, D.C., the capital of the country, and then you have Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Delaware, you have this great area. And the complexity of the societies here, which leads you really to understand the complexity of the organisms, the flora and fauna within this area. So through Chesapeake Natives, define that exactly. What is it, and what about the complexity of what you're trying to do with these plants and getting it out to the homeowners and to schools and other groups?
The easiest way to say that, I would say, is by planting native plants in homeowners' gardens and in basically the cultivated world of these complex cities and everywhere, by planting native plants here, we can work together with nature rather than compete with it, with introduced plants that might be flowery, might be pretty, but do not necessarily help all these different organisms that live in the Chesapeake Bay. So by planting the native plants, we actually help nature, even in our own backyard, a step along.
Well, I know we have something that's called invasive species. What is an invasive species, and how is that juxtaposition against what you would call native species?
An invasive species, or invasive species, is a non-native invader. So basically, it's a plant that's not locally here, that doesn't belong in for us, the Chesapeake Bay watershed. But if you're elsewhere, it doesn't belong in that local area. And it starts taking over the natural habitat. As you can see on the photograph behind us right now, that's actually one of the areas that was very heavily invaded by vinca and beautyberry, which is a very aggressive vine. We've actually been removing these invasive plants to give the original plants a chance again, and we'll be planting that same area in with some of our plants to help the state park in which this was hand along, trying to stay native and stay local.
And also, too, these invasive species actually will kill out the native species in many cases. And so, in a sense, just like we've talked about food deserts where people do not have natural foods within the local area, within a mile of their home, same thing can happen here, where you actually kill out the native species, and then the quality of the environment around that, both for the pest, which many people don't really like, but we need, and also the animals actually can be chased out of an area.
Certainly.
And so looking at this, so then as we're involving these people, I know you're really focused on having volunteers. So these types of volunteers, what are they doing? And then what are they actually learning back from having this type of experience working with you at Chesapeake Natives?
It depends which day is what they're doing. For example, in a day as this one, we went into nature trying to distinguish between the native plants and the invasive plants that are killing off, as you mentioned, the native species, and are less useful for some of our local pollinators as well. Another day might be, for example, that we're at the greenhouse actually working to grow from seed that we probably have harvested from the wild responsibly, so that we make sure that in the wild the plant continues to exist, but at the same time we can grow responsibly. We can grow and help nature along with some of our local plants. So it's a variety of things that our volunteers can do, depending on what they're interested in.
One of the things, I want to keep the slide up if you don't mind, Selwyn, because this is something we really don't think much about. But in today's society, with all the computers and social media, many people are inside virtually all the time. Many people are not getting out in nature. They're not really exercising. They should. So obesity is really at epidemic proportions. What are some of the other life lessons that these youth are learning as they're out there in the woods, sweating and being in the sunshine, the fresh air? But what other kinds of things, again, going back to this benefits, because it's always a two-way street. Volunteers are giving their time and their talents, and at the same time you want to make sure they're getting things back.
We teach them about the local plants, about a sense of belonging, where our plants come from, and a sense of what creates this culture, this natural and both cultural aspects of our environment. So, and as you mentioned it's going out in nature, spending time outdoors rather than behind your computer. We can talk about it, but if we have a chance to install native gardens like this one, we can really see you don't need to go to some of the big box stores to buy some of the heavily propagated plants that might be native to Japan, or at least not native to this area. And our own native plants have a certain beauty as well. And
Well, you know, many people think of boxwoods as being a native species, and it couldn't be anything further from the truth, as, you know, the English came into, and also the French came into the eastern part of the United States. They were bringing boxwoods, and literally just hundreds and thousands of species at those times. But, you know, if you look at the native species that we have, it's just phenomenal, the variety that they have, the beauty, and the way that they just blend in with nature. But many people are saying, because of all the invasives, that they're really, you know, what is a native species anymore? If the boxwood's been in America for, say, 400 years, is that now become, you know, a native species or not? How do you define that, Selwyn? So when someone asks you that and they want to come out and they really want to have these native species in their own garden, how do you define what really is a native species?
A native species is, in the US, generally accepted what was around at the time the Europeans arrived. So in that sense, yes, the Europeans might have arrived with the boxwood, but it wasn't there before they arrived. And that's what will really separate from what is introduced at a later point in time. English ivy is another really famous one that everyone sees around and a lot of people plant in their yards. But when not kept in control, it really starts taking over your neighbor's yard or the wild woods area behind your house.
It's just like the bamboo. Many people love bamboo. It's something it could have been brought in from anywhere, but probably Japan and China and other countries. But I tell you, if you let it go for a couple of years, in about 3 years, it'll absolutely take over everything that you have there. So looking at these native species and putting in these kinds of gardens, what is the amount of time, what is the amount of investment, and also what is you need to learn in order to do it right?
It depends. Actually, planting a native garden, once installed, takes less time to maintain and to keep fertilized than some of the non-native gardens. Because our plants are used to this environment, they grow in this environment without extra fertilizer in the wild as well. And so when you install it in your yard, of course, you will need to go through the process of planting every single plant into the ground, but once installed, it's a relatively low maintenance garden, in fact.
Now you're talking about fertilizer. So we think of chemical fertilizers, and we have the organics, you know, which you're making the mulch and doing all these kinds of things. So in a garden like this, are you able to actually use all organics and use local plant materials to go back in? How do you do that?
Again, our native plants don't need many special requirements. They are used to this area, used to this kind of soil. So a lot of the regular leaf mulch, and that's actually what we use at our greenhouse. We do not use any chemical fertilizer, any sort of artificial additive to the soils. And the regular leaf compost, the compost from last year's plants as well will go back into the soil and be a natural fertilizer for as much as the plants needed.
We only have 15 seconds. Where is Chesapeake Natives going in the future?
Well, we're restoring our greenhouse. It's built in 1935. It was abandoned in about 1950. We hope to restore it to its original beauty and continue growing our plants and enlarge our operations to bring more native plants into the world.
And also be able to bring as many volunteers as possible out to what it is you're doing. And I think the work you're doing, Selwyn, is absolutely fantastic, and it's just wonderful what you're doing, and the opportunity you have such a beautiful facility, and it's so historic. So thank you very much for being with us and being on the Emerald Planet. And thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.